Back in 2014, when I was living in the Netherlands, I decided to learn tailoring. I thought it was going to be super easy. I can go on Google or YouTube, find all the knowledge, and then make a jacket. Not only did I not find the knowledge, but I also couldn't find the materials. And that was the annoying part. You know why? Because I couldn't even practice on my own and experiment and just play. So, what was my problem? First of all, I had to go and find all the different suppliers that potentially sold the materials that I thought I should be looking for. When I found them, I didn't know which materials to choose and how much of each material. So you can already imagine how doubtful that can make you. Then there was the problem of not every supplier that I found had all the materials that I needed. So I had to buy 2 materials from one supplier, 3 from another, 5 from one abroad, and all of them charged like astronomical shipping amounts. So I was paying more for shipping and the time that I was spending finding all these suppliers than just getting on with the work and learning of the techniques. You may go through the same process. In fact, I know that many of you who have been contacted me are complaining about why can't we find the right materials in our country? Why do we have to order everything from the UK or Italy or some other country that supplies it? And why are they always so bloody expensive if they are in a country where there aren't many tailors? Now, that is a problem. Why is it a problem? Because if I want to talk you through the steps of making a jacket, I cannot be successful if you can't find materials. So, for that problem, we have a solution. Here it is. We call it Purple Box. What is the Purple Box? This box contains all the materials, exactly the same materials that I'm going to be using in the upcoming lessons to show you how to make a jacket from start to finish, assembled for you to the exact amounts that you need so that you can just get on with the work and not worry about which materials you have to order, how much, which supplier you have to find, and all of that. Now, we have a purple box for both models, the traditional model and the Pagoda model. Let's begin by having a look at the materials that we have assembled for the Pagoda model. As I've mentioned before, the Pagoda model is a more advanced model and it's therefore going to have more materials. You're going to feel a heavier box whenever it arrives at your door. So let's go ahead and see what it is that we have inside this box. As you can see, it's quite big. It's filled up the entire box and it may be a little bit difficult to get out, but we're gonna do our best. So, just like the traditional model, this bundle is exactly wrapped up the same way that I used to receive my bundles when I did my apprenticeship on Savile Row. At the bottom of our box, we have the patterns that you'll need to make the jacket along with me. These are exactly the same patterns that I use in the lessons. So let's remove the box and have a look and see what we have inside our bundle. The first layer that we have wrapped around our bundle is going to be our sleeve head roll. Just like the traditional model, this is made of wadding and bias canvas, and it will help us to maintain the roll of our sleeves. We're going to have roped sleeves, so we need a little bit more elevation right on the top of our sleeves, and the canvas is going to help us with that. Now, one of the first things that you'll notice is that you have a lot more canvas with the Pagoda model than you have with the traditional model. This is because we're going to have extra pieces of reinforcements for the lapels, the skirt, the shoulders, and therefore we need more canvas. You can still cut the pieces for your jacket on the double, so you don't have to puzzle around too much. Then we have our fabric. Now, our fabric is also, like the traditional model, made of linen, and it's got a lovely green color to it. Linen, again, because it upholds shape quite nicely, it shows the grain and all the creases, so it helps you to develop good habits. Then we have our lining. Now, our lining is made of viscose, and you will receive the same amounts that you had with the traditional model. It's beautifully green, matches with the fabric and the rest of our trimmings. It's very slippery, so if you have never worked with lining, You will have to get used to it. Let's move on to our Silesia, also known as pocketing. Our pocketing is made of pure cotton, and as you can see, it beautifully matches the green that we have. It's all color coded. Now, inside our Silesia, we have a few things. The first things you notice is going to be this yellow packaging. What's inside? You're going to find out soon. Let's first put it aside and cover all the other materials that we have. So we have our horsehair, same amount as we had with the traditional model, but we're going to cut it differently. We're going to cut it on the bias. This horsehair is very high quality. It's got a great bounce. The length grain is made of cotton, and the weft, which is the horizontal grain, is made of horsehair. It's the horsehair that causes that bounce. Then we have our color canvas, and now what you'll notice with the color canvas is that we have two pieces. Unlike the traditional model where we had only one piece for the color, which is right here, cut on the bias, we have an additional one, which we are going to use for our pagoda shoulders. And I know that most of you have been waiting for that for a very long time. So that is this extra piece cut on the straight grain. Inside it, we have very, very fine, thin, pure cotton fusing, which we're going to use to reinforce the jettings in our in-breasts, in our cross pockets, and some other areas. It's see-through and very, very light, so we're not gluing everything together. It's just there to add some stability. Then we have, let's see, then we have this white piece of fusible interfacing, which is heavier than the black one. It's cut on the bias and it's loosely woven. We're going to use this on our undercolor. A lot of layers will get attached to our undercolor, and therefore we need something to go over them and cover up all the steps so that they don't show through on our top color. You'll see how we're going to use all of this. So then we have a piece of linen Holland. Linen Holland, as I described, will get very hard and rigid whenever it's wet and then dried off with the iron, and that's the effect that we want for our outbreast welt. Then we have our Domette. Now, as I've mentioned before, these hairs will be very sharp. Whenever we make a canvas with horsehair in it, we have to find some way to cover those raw edges. Sometimes we use a tape just to cover the edges, but don't add any Domette. But in our case, we're going to use Domette to cover the entire horsehair and prevent anything from poking through the body of the wearer. Now, this Domette is of high quality cotton. It's very dense, it's very robust, but at the same time, it allows you to mold it to whatever degree you have to mold it to whenever you're making your body canvas. Now, inside our Domette, we have a few goodies. The first goodie that we have is our marking thread, made of 100% cotton. It's slightly thicker than the average basting thread, and we're going to use this to mark stitch our fabric. We need a thicker thread so that the thread stays in the fabric until we take it out. We don't want to lose our markings. Now, wrapped around our marking thread, we have two number 5 needles. This is the ideal size needle that you're going to have to need for mark stitching. Any smaller will be very difficult to thread, as I've mentioned before, and any bigger will prevent you from making accurate markings. So let's put this right here. Then we have some Fray Check. Now, Fray Check is going to be our best friend whenever we are going to make our buttonholes, because who wants their buttonholes to start fraying? It's a nightmare. We're also going to use Fray Check on the edges of our collar once we've cut it to the shape that we want, and our front edges. Sometimes some canvases are very fraying and we have to prevent them from fraying because the edges that we're going to work on should be as clean as we can get them, and Fray Check helps us with that. So here we have our Fray Check. Then we have our machine thread, which perfectly matches the color of our fabric, and we're going to use this to make up pretty much all machine work that we have to do, and the seams and so on and so forth. So that's for our machine thread. Then we've got some buttons, and as I've said before, these packages that we make are made of leftover papers that we have in the workshop, so they're recycled, and sometimes you may find a marking on them. So this had whatever marking that I made at the time when I was drafting a pattern, and it just gives you a little bit of our workshop to you. Inside our packaging for our buttons, we have a few buttons, and the design is based on natural horn. But it's not natural horn, it's actually bio-resin. So this will give some of you who are sensitive to natural horn a peace of mind that it's 100% ethically sourced and no animals were killed for just a few buttons. Let's put this aside. The last thing we have in our Domette wrapped up is our edge tape. We're going to use this to create shape along our lapel, to stabilize the front edge, and to draw the sides in a little bit to make the jacket go around the body without breaking up. So now that you've patiently waited and gone through all of this, let's see what we have inside our yellow package. Inside our yellow package, as I mentioned before, is the material that we need for our shoulder pads. We're going to make our own shoulder pads. I want you to know exactly how you have to make them, and therefore we need some wadding. Now this is quite thick, so it will be quite easy for us to make the pads, because otherwise you would need a lot of thin layers on top of one another, and that's not really ideal. So we have chosen a thicker wadding so that you need less layers. Now carefully open this wadding, and what you'll see inside are a few more goodies, let's say. The first one is our basting thread. Our basting thread is thinner than our marking thread, and just like the marking thread, it's made of cotton and has 2 number 5 needles. So let's put this next to the big brother here. Then we have 3 pieces of Jinbutsu chalk. Jinbutsu chalk is made in Japan. It makes beautiful markings, accurate, thin, sharp lines, is easily brushed away, and doesn't leave permanent markings, which some of the cheaper chalks do. So that's that. Then we've got some threads. Now, what are these threads? The first one is gimp, along with a number 18 tapestry needle. We're going to need gimp to elevate our buttonholes and to give them a little bit more strength along the edge. Then we have bonded nylon. This is the thread that is very strong, and we're going to use this for sewing up our buttons. Buttons will get a lot of use, so therefore the thread that we use for them has to manage that and shouldn't break easily. Along with our bonded nylon, we have a number 5 needle, which is the same length as our basting thread needle, and that is going to help us to get through those shanks and the necks of the buttons, because sometimes they will get stuck and a longer needle is preferred. Then we have our waxed silamite thread, which is used for pretty much all hand sewing that we do. Inside it, there will be 3 number 7 needles. These are finer needles that you need to pad your lapels, your collars, your canvases, and other areas where fine needlework is required. Now, in the upcoming lessons, I'm going to show you how to actually unwrap this and prepare it for easier use. I'm going to show you how to do that exactly the way I was taught in the workshop that I used to do my apprenticeship. Then we have our pure silk thread. This is used, of course, to make our buttonholes. It's going to go on top of the gimp. And last but not least, we have a piece of double-sided fusing, which is going to reinforce the corners of our jettings. Now, all the materials that I have in front of me, just as I mentioned with the traditional model, are used by professional tailors all around the world. These are industry standards. In Japan, in South Korea, in Salvador, in Italy, in France, tailors use these materials to produce jackets worth of 4,000 pounds, 3,000 pounds, and with some dedication and commitment, you will be able to do the same. One of the things that I would like to emphasize before we close off this lesson is that you don't need these bundles per se to follow along with our lessons. Our lessons are for free, will for always be, and they will be available at your demand. If you are a perfectionist, however, or you're living in a country where you don't have access to all the suppliers or all the materials, you would like to evaluate every step that you go through directly with what I have as a result, then these bundles are the right thing for you. There is a traditional model, there is a pagoda model, and if you go through both of them, you will learn the basics and then learn how to turn those basics into advanced skills.